Hey everyone, I've just been reading through all of your various comments and questions on the forum, and I think there are some things that I really need to clear up, given the things you're asking. And I think a good chunk of it is my fault for not giving you all enough of what you need for the context and the background. But I'm also going to blame the videos for being somewhat out of date. That's not their fault, but two, sometimes flat out wrong. So there are three things I want to clear up. One is about Neanderthal brains, one is about Neanderthal diets, and one is about Neanderthal species versus extinction versus kind of what happened to them. So the first one and the easy one is the Neanderthal brains. So in the video, it says that Neanderthal brains are bigger, or I should say were bigger than what our brains are now. However, that's not true. So Neanderthals in the fossil record, they are overrepresented by males. We find far more male Neanderthal skeletons than female Neanderthal skeletons. I believe, as far as I know, there are only like two female Neanderthal skeletons that we have, which is not many at all. And we have a whole lot more male Neanderthal skeletons. And so that means that the average brain size is higher than it would have been if it were properly represented by both males and females. Because males have larger body sizes and brain size scales with body size, you're going to get a larger average for brain size if you're only looking at male brains, which is what overrepresents the Neanderthal fossil record. So if you were to actually compare Neanderthal male brain size to our male brain size, it's basically the same. So Neanderthal brain size and anatomically modern human brain size, those are the same. So no difference there, despite what the video says. And now the diet, and I think I also might want to mention tools with this too. This is also the other fairly easy one. And so it was saying that Neanderthals are top level carnivores and all they ate was meat, 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 meat. Yes, they ate a lot of meat, but they didn't only eat meat. So one thing to keep in mind is that Neanderthals have this long history, and it's technically our history, of being denigrated and viewed as like big dumb brutes who were evolutionary dead ends. This will come up again later. And, you know, they never advanced or did anything different. And it's just not true. Just because the evidence isn't there, or at least wasn't there at the time of the video, doesn't mean it doesn't exist. So Neanderthals absolutely ate vegetation, and they also ate marine life. And we are getting more and more evidence that they had a varied diet. And not just big top level animals or large mammals. They did do a lot of that. They had a ton of meat in their diet. But if we take a look at modern humans, us today, if we consume more than like 35 to 40% of our diet regularly without consuming other things like carbohydrates and fats, we actually can get protein toxicity. That's a real thing. And so Neanderthals had to have, unless they had some crazy physiological adaptation for like 100% meat diet, they would not have been able to do that. So Neanderthals had a more varied diet than what that video was telling you all. And there are even some sites, there's one in Spain, El Cidrón, where at least the chemical signatures they're looking at, there seemed to be a population of Neanderthals there that may have been like almost completely vegetarian at certain times of the year, with very little meat. And so my guess is that Neanderthals were taking advantage of what was available when it was available. They were likely eating vegetables and other vegetation that was seasonally available. When it was cold and winter out, they were probably eating more meat than veg, which just kind of makes sense for where they were and when they were. There's also this misconception that Neanderthal tools just never advanced. And that's also not true. We're seeing it more and more and more. And a few of you asked questions like, why didn't Neanderthals develop projectiles to, you know, better kill the animals that they were eating the way anatomically modern humans did? So part of it was what animals that Neanderthals focused on. They focused on big animals, like very large mammals that like one person couldn't take down, and that would be really tough to take down with a projectile. You wouldn't be able to penetrate deep enough into the animal to actually kill it. And so they had to be up close and personal with their prey. And a friend of mine, Dr. Libby Kogel at the University of Missouri, once did a study on the breakage patterns among Neanderthal bones. And these are breaks that happened while they were live, not when the fossils broke like in the ground after the Neanderthal died. And what she found was that the injury pattern that Neanderthals were displaying is basically the same as rodeo clowns. And so, these folks who get in the way of a charging bull to protect a cowboy have the same injury patterns as Neanderthals. So this is not to say that Neanderthals were riding the big animals. They could have been, and that would be amazing. Um, but it does suggest that they were in very close contact, especially during hunts, to actually bring the animal down. So that's the other thing I want to talk about. The third thing is about Neanderthals and where they fit into our history and into evolutionary history as a whole. And so I've mentioned this to you before in that I'm a lumper. I believe that a lot of these different species names and a lot of these different species are actually all the same species. I believe Neanderthals are the same species as us. They were able to interbreed with us, and we see this in our DNA today. We see it in modern day Europeans. We find specifically Neanderthal DNA. Red hair and very pale skin is a Neanderthal specific mutation that did not develop in anatomically modern humans independently. We got that from breeding with Neanderthals. We also now find Neanderthal DNA in modern African populations. And my guess is that it's also in Asian populations, but that study just hasn't been done yet. So I think what you're seeing, and I'm about to share my screen with a real quick PowerPoint slide that I put together, is that once Homo erectus arrives on the scene, Homo erectus is the first one to leave Africa. Homo erectus leaves Africa, goes to Europe, goes to Asia, goes to Indonesia, and over time, because they're there a long time, they develop adaptations to those specific environments, or through genetic drift, they get different features like the sagittal keel that we talked about with Homo erectus. And so you get these differences that you see in the fossil record, but personally, I do not believe these are big enough differences that would make them a different species that would be reproductively isolated or incapable of producing viable offspring with what will become anatomically modern humans. And so you get this change over time from Homo erectus into what we now recognize as Homo sapiens. And I am a firm believer that Neanderthals are Homo sapiens. There is overwhelming evidence now that we interbred with them when we encountered them. There is, I hate to say Neanderthals were extinct, because I don't think they are extinct. They are alive and well in us today with their DNA. The common belief with this is that anatomically modern humans were likely more successful and they had larger population sizes. Because of that, their genes are just more represented in our gene pool. There were more of them, so we see a greater percentage of anatomically modern human DNA relative to Neanderthal DNA. And so that's why we only get some Neanderthal DNA and not all of the very specific Neanderthal DNA. And so let me quickly share my screen with you. Also, I have a friend who insisted that I used this office background. Insisted. I got yelled at for days for not using this. Anyway, so let me share my screen. All right, so this is what I want to show you. So I basically put together like a real rough kind of lineage so you can have this, and it goes way back. So for who leads to Australopithecus anamensis, we don't know. They're the three contenders that we talked about in class before spring break, but then after that, it's a bit of like which one that could be, if it is either of those or any of those, it's a bit of a crapshoot. So I'm starting at Australopithecus anamensis. So in the Akabak view of things, it's Australopithecus anamensis to Australopithecus afarensis. Ooh, that's misspelled. It should be afarensis. To Australopithecus africanus, to Homo habilis, and Homo habilis to Homo erectus. There's also a thought that Homo habilis might not belong in any of this, and I would be okay with that, but that's fine. We'll just leave it there for now. Homo erectus is the one that leaves Africa and can go by many names that some think are different species. I do not. And so here we have what people might consider different species, but I think what we have is geographical variation, like we see geographical variation today with populations. And so Homo heidelbergensis is like Homo erectus in Europe, Rudolfensis is Homo erectus in Africa, and they kept the Homo erectus name for Homo erectus in Asia. I have no idea. I think they're all Homo erectus. That's it. And then it is these geographically variable Homo erectus populations over time became anatomically modern humans. We see something a bit different coming out of Africa of what we know as anatomically modern humans today, and they are the ones that spread out all across the world yet again after Homo erectus. And those are the ones that kind of flooded the gene pool with anatomically modern genes, but they also interbred with all the populations of Homo heidelbergensis, rudolfensis, erectus, and whatnot through time. And part of this is also archaic Homo sapiens, which are Neanderthals. There are Neanderthals in the Middle East, so the Levant region. They are the oldest ones, and were likely another kind of migratory group out of Africa, and then evolved and adapted to their specific climates and their specific environments where they went into it, which is why we get the suite of interesting Neanderthal features that we do today. And so again, Homo erectus into archaic Homo sapiens and modern Homo sapiens, this is changed through time. Would we be able to interbreed with Homo erectus today? I don't know. It wouldn't surprise me, I think, either way. I think enough time has passed that, yeah, sure, we probably could not breed, but if we could, I also would not be surprised by this at all. And so, again, all of this is to say that I personally do not believe Neanderthals were a distinct species. I think they were fully capable, and the DNA evidence supports this, fully capable of interbreeding with us. And we see that, and we see that in features. So I hope this has cleared things up a little bit, because I saw a lot of these misconceptions going on throughout the forum. And I will try to be better about this, filming little videos to make sure that you guys are all clear on the different concepts. And also, please read my comments on the forums. I have no idea if they're falling on deaf ears or not, because if you aren't reading them, it takes a lot of time to respond. So let me know. Anyway, please feel free to email me any questions or concerns, and I really do hope that this clears some things up for you. Have a good night.